The Marvel Cinematic Universe is pretty good, a project I think will never be topped. We are currently knee-deep into Phase 4, with the WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Loki shows, and the Black Widow movie. With a whole load of other movies and shows on the horizon, it's safe to say we won't be short of content anytime soon. While I did enjoy the shows they had to offer on Disney+, I feel like the whole MCU should have ended with Endgame. It was such a satisfying conclusion to this series of films, and it was at that point when I started to experience burnout. Around the same time, I was getting into shows that included superheroes or people with supernatural abilities. It was refreshing and felt different to what the MCU were offering. But enough about modern day MCU. Let's go back in time to the year 2011. You know, back in the day when people stole bags of rice during the London riots. Moves like Jagger by Maroon 5 were cursing our radio waves. And Barack Obama was the president of us. Oh yeah, and a movie called Thor came out, but I don't want to talk about it. Huh? Hello? Do I really have to? Okay, fine. Oh yeah, that was just my friend Don Cheadle. He said that if I don't talk about Thor, he'll bomb my house. Why? Well, it is rude to ask someone how much money they're making, so I assume the same logic applied to this. Thor is the fourth movie in the MCU, after the first two Iron Man movies and The Incredible Hulk. Iron Man was a great introduction to the series. The Incredible Hulk was not good, and Iron Man 2 was a disappointing follow-up to the first movie, so they had to hit it out of the park with Thor. And they didn't. It wasn't good at all, but I like it anyway. I really don't know why. I just have a soft spot for this movie. I remembered watching it for the first time, a few months after seeing the first Avengers movie in the cinema. I still think this movie is one of the worst the MCU has to offer, and I'm gonna need a solid case for why you should watch this movie, which will be really difficult. The film is directed by Kenneth Branagh, who directed films such as the live-action Cinderella movie, Murder on the Orient Express, Artemis Fowl, and a bunch of other stuff that I've never heard of before. He is not good at action directing, and this movie shows. It could be annoying at times when action films do a million cuts for one punch, and it makes it hard to comprehend what's happening on screen. The opposite is true in Thor. It's too slow and largely unsatisfying to watch. I look at the fights, and it looks like they're jumping around on the moon, especially during the final battle between Thor and Loki. I do think that the fight on Earth is okay, but not good. Of all places on Earth they could have used to film, they chose New Mexico. Why? It's such a stupid location for an action movie. It's boring. I mean, until I see Walter White in his underpants shooting Thor in the head. Don't have the scenes on Earth be in New Mexico. The poster also screams boring. But I do like Loki's face. He looks like he got a Sonic toy in his Happy Meal. Thor is played by Chris Hemsworth, who was in an Australian soap called Home and Away. I've never seen an episode of it, but I can imagine the story being, "Good day, mate. You wanna have some shrimp on the barbie?" "No thanks, mate. I'm gonna go surfing, and then I'm gonna punch some kangaroos." Note, do not punch kangaroos or you will go to jail. Tom Hiddleston plays Thor's brother Loki, the god of mischief, and he is a favourite among the fan base. Loki in this movie's fine. I just think he's not as good as the Loki we all know and love from the first Avengers movie onwards. He could be a bit one-dimensional at times, and there were moments in the film where I found him to be unintentionally hilarious.
Tell me! Don't tell me it was that woman. Oh.
I prefer Thor, to be honest. I've always considered him to be my favourite character in the entire MCU, and I think it's because of this movie. Hemsworth does such a good job at portraying the God of Thunder. He plays the character with so much charm and charisma. I like how Thor is an arrogant and pampered individual in the beginning. He has his trusty hammer, his people adore him, and it always felt like nothing bad would ever happen to him as he is about to become king of Asgard. Just as Odin, Thor's father, was about to make him king, the ceremony gets disrupted by frost giants who try to steal something from Asgard's vault. He goes to where the giants live, Jotunheim, and fights them without Odin's permission. Odin arrives and brings them back to Asgard. Thor and Odin argue. Odin takes away his hammer for not being worthy and banishes Thor to New Mexico. Odin sends the hammer down as well, just in case, he becomes worthy again. Thor meets with 3 scientists, and with them, he learns to calm down and be more humane. He gets his hammer back and returns to Asgard a changed man. By the end of the movie, he is no longer the war-hungry demigod we saw before, and gets a slice of humble pie, realizing he's not worthy of being king. However, I do think he's at his worst in the first 2 Thor movies, but I don't think that's Hemsworth's fault. I think it was down to the poor script he was given. Anthony Hopkins' performance as Odin is decent, but nothing great. He doesn't show much emotion during the film. I guess that's kind of the point. He's supposed to be a wise king, but there were times where I felt like he could have reacted more naturally. Like at the end of the film, when he saves Thor and Loki at the Rainbow Bridge, and Loki is holding on for dear life. When he falls into the hole, Odin's like, I mean, come on man, your son died. That's how you react when a student asks if you want to go to the toilet during class. Then there are times when he shouts out of nowhere,
But you're not king! You are a vain, greedy, cruel boy! Hey!
It feels out of character for him, but it cracks me up. Idris Elba as Heimdall and Rene Russo as Frigga, Thor's mother, are both as bland as porridge. Rene Russo barely gets any screen time in this movie or the next one, and Idris Elba has no emotions whatsoever. Lady Sif and the Warriors Tree are pretty lame. Thor tries to make the viewer care about them, and, ironically enough, it makes me care about them even less.
And who proved wrong all who scoffed at the idea that a young maiden could be one of the fiercest warriors this realm has ever known?
I did.
True, but I supported you.
Now the human characters. Agent Coulson is fine. Hawkeye appears for about a minute and does nothing. And then you have the 3 scientists. Jane Foster, the love interest. Darcy, the quirky girl. And Eric Selvig. Yeah, I've got nothing to say about him. They're all bad, and I'm glad Taika Waititi didn't include them in Ragnarok. Oh wait, Jane will return in Thor Love and Thunder. Oh, fudge. Now let's talk about the stuff in this movie that doesn't make sense. Number 1.
Mjolnir's power has no equal.
No equal, huh? I don't know about that. Number 2.
Couldn't you just leave the bridge open for us?
To leave the bridge open would unleash the full power of the Bifrost and destroy Jotunheim with you upon it.
How do these guys not know how the Bifrost works? Aren't they thousands of years old? It's a lazy way of conveying exposition. Number 3.
Destroy the bridge or let us be arrogant!
But didn't Loki say that there were other ways of getting in and out of Asgard? They rebuild the bridge by the time the next movie comes around, so what Loki said was pointless. Number 4. When Loki finds out that he was taken from the Frost Giants by Odin when he was a baby, he becomes pissed off at him. As soon as Odin goes into a deep sleep, Loki goes to Laufey, who is one of the Frost Giants, and tells him that he can kill Odin. Just before he does, Loki kills Laufey and proceeds to destroy Jotunheim with the Bifrost. Like, why? I thought Loki wanted Odin dead so he could permanently become king of Asgard, but instead, he wanted to destroy Jotunheim to impress Odin. Like, what? I know he's the god of mischief, but it's such a roundabout move that it's hard to believe. Number 5. I don't understand why Jane would want to be with Thor. I know she had her stuff taken by S.H.I.E.L.D. and she wants help, but why wouldn't she just call the police? I guess they're too busy going after Eisenberg. The fact that Thor says he's basically a god with a hammer that can shoot lightning should be enough to convince Jane he's a crazy person. I bet it's because he's good looking, isn't he? And that's what made Jane want to believe him, despite how insane he sounds. I mean, as someone who is ugly, if I said the same stuff as Thor to Jane, she'd send me to a mental asylum. Despite the fact that I said all these bad things about the film, I still like it. It's not as bad as Thor: The Dark World, but it's nowhere near as good as Thor Ragnarok. The thing with most, if not all MCU movies, is that they are bland when they're at their absolute worst. However, they're masterpieces compared to the worst DCEU and X-Men movies. Thor may not be a good film, but I would rather watch it than Batman v Superman or X-Men Origins Wolverine any day of the week. Watching Thor for this review was the first time seeing it in 9 years, and I probably won't be seeing it again for another 9 years. The only reason you would ever watch this movie is if you want to do a giant MCU binge watch session. In the end, Thor has its moments, but it's mostly a boring experience. Okay, you're probably looking at me like, really? After all that, and you still like the movie? Well, there are far worse movies out there that exist that people like, such as The Room or The Amazing Bulk. But there are also some movies out there that are actually good that I just don't like, such as Space Jam 2. That's weird. I hear something. What's this? Oh shit.
I killed Neil. Don't you ever disrespect Space Jam 2, starring me, Don Cheadle aka God, again.